You really think you belong here? That's what my dad said, laughing, swirling his wine like this was just another joke. Then my sister leaned over close enough to be sweet, loud enough for shame. "She smells like pig manure," she whispered. And I said nothing. I didn't flinch. I folded my napkin, placed it on my lap, and smiled, because what they didn't know, what they could never imagine, was that this restaurant, the one they'd waited 5 weeks to get into, the one they bragged about on Instagram, the one with the exposed beams and the rustic firewood oven, it was mine. The place they were sitting in, I built it. And I had waited 5 long years for this moment. I wasn't always the girl who made my father choke on his wine. I used to be Hannah Clark, middle child, middle disappointment. In our suburban Connecticut neighborhood, you were either a prodigy or a problem. There was no room for in between. My older sister, Lillian, she was everything they wanted, Ivy League bound, fluent French, her LinkedIn practically pre-written by sophomore year. My younger brother groomed for finance before he could spell NASDAQ. And me, I liked pigs. Not as a phase, not as a joke. I loved pigs. By age 12, I could tell you about rotational grazing feed ratios and ethical breeding practices like I was reciting the gospel. While my siblings went to tennis camp and SAT boot camp, I was mucking stalls, bottle feeding runt piglets, and learning to read a weathered barn floor like Braille. My mother used to say I smelled unrefined, but she meant unacceptable. At 14, I told them I wanted to start a sustainable pig farm, raise heritage breeds, build something clean, real, honest. My dad didn't even glance up from the Wall Street Journal. He said, "That's not a future. That's just dirt in disguise." And Lillian laughed. "What are you going to call it? Pig Princess Inc.?" I didn't say a word, but inside I started building. They sent me to college anyway. Said I owed them that much. I lasted 1 semester and half of another, the day I dropped out, and told them my plan. My father slammed his fist on the dining table so hard the silverware jumped. My mother stood up mid-sentence and walked out of the room like I'd never existed. From that moment on, I was erased. No more birthdays, no invitations, not even a text when my grandmother passed. But honestly, I wasn't surprised. In our family, love came with conditions, and I had broken all of them. So I left. I had a few $1,000s in savings, a bruised dream, and a Craigslist lease on 5 acres in rural Vermont. I moved into a trailer that barely had heat. My boots were secondhand. My pigs, rescues from a failed commercial farm. They were skinny, scared, and silent, just like me. And yet it felt real, even when I was knee-deep in frozen mud, even when I cried alone because the silence felt louder than any lecture. They had their boardrooms and dinner parties. I had bruised hands, blisters, and a will made of barbed wire. But I believed. I believed in the kind of life that wasn't bought, but built. They called me Pig Girl at the local store. Some said it as a joke. Others said it with pity. No one said it with respect. Even the other farmers rolled their eyes when I talked about pasture-raised pigs and no-hormone diets. One guy even told me, "Sounds cute until they tear up an acre overnight." They weren't wrong. I made mistakes. Big ones. I lost money, I lost sleep, but I never lost faith. I started filming not for content, but for clarity. Videos of piglets napping in the hay, me pulling fresh bacon from a handmade smoker, slow-roasted pork belly with heirloom apples. Every meal was a thank you to the land, the animal, the grit. Then one day I posted a video titled, "What Happens When You Respect the Animal?" I uploaded it and forgot. 3 days later, 2 million views. At first I thought it was a glitch. 2 million views. On that video then came the comments. "Where can I taste this? This is real food. You just changed how I think about pork forever." Food bloggers started reaching out. Then a small article on a regional website. Then a food editor from Boston messaged me dinner. "I want the full experience." "What's your address?" I didn't have a restaurant. I had a barn and a string of hardware store lights. But I said yes. That night, I cooked 6 courses on a single burner. Handmade pork ravioli, shoulder slow-roasted with cider and foraged rosemary. I borrowed chairs from 3 neighbors and prayed the table didn't collapse. The food editor cried, literally, at course 3. A week later, I was in a magazine. Then came the email. A small investor group based in Boston had seen the article. They loved my mission. They wanted in. I didn't know anything about business plans, but I knew how to build trust, so I invited them out. Same deal, dinner, at the farm. Nothing fancy, just firewood mismatched napkins and food that tasted like the truth. They signed the next day. That's how The Honest Pig was born. First, it was just a converted barn with 12 tables and a menu I handwrote every morning. Then came the stories, the articles, the demand. People drove hours. Some slept in their cars just to get a table. I still mucked stalls every morning. But now, when I looked at my pigs, I saw something else. Not just survival, not just food, a future. 9 months later, we opened our first real location. Not fancy, just a gutted old feed store with reclaimed wood and mismatched chairs. No neon signs, no fake farm aesthetic, just a small iron pig silhouette above the door, and the scent of hickory smoke rolling through the gravel parking lot. People came anyway. They brought lawn chairs when we ran out of tables. They stayed 2, sometimes 3 hours, and they told everyone. I built the menu from my memories. Pork chops with apple glaze like the kind I cooked in my trailer. Crispy pig ear tacos with lime crema and pickled radish. House-cured ham over skillet cornbread drizzled in hot honey. Every ingredient touched by a real hand. Every dish a story. No shortcuts, no frozen meat, no one on staff who didn't believe in what we were building. Then came the press. A writer from Bon Appetit called it the most honest plate in New England. A month later, the New York Times showed up. They called me the Pig Lady of America. I laughed at first, but the name stuck, and so did the attention. Offers poured in, big money, big strings, the kind that want your soul with your signature. I said no to all of them until I met Gloria Sandoval, Latina, self-made, sharp as lemon rind, built her bakery empire from scratch. She tasted one dish, smiled, and said, "Let's scale it without selling your soul." We partnered. I kept the name, the food, the values. She brought the systems, the supply chains, the discipline. Together we opened our flagship location, a restored train station in the heart of Boston. Vaulted ceilings, exposed brick, the kind of place my parents would actually call real dining. Within 2 weeks, we had a 6-month wait list. We made Forbes 30 under 30. I was invited to Sustainability Panel's Food Summit's global chef gatherings. And through it all, I never once put my face on the website. No interviews with my photo. No mention of my hometown. No clues about my past. Let the food speak. Let the silence say what words couldn't. I wasn't hiding. I was choosing to grow without begging for approval. Until one day it happened, an email from my sister. Subject line, family dinner, The Honest Pig, body can't wait to celebrate my engagement with everyone, reservation confirmed, 7:30 p.m. Saturday. You better show up, Hannah, you owe mom at least that much. Attached a reservation confirmation, table for 7, The Honest Pig, Boston flagship. I reread it 3 times. They had no idea. The wait list for Saturday nights stretched 2 months, and yet they'd somehow gotten a table. They had no idea whose name was on the lease, whose hands built the walls, whose pigs made their dinner, and now they were walking right into my world, on my terms. Part of me thought about canceling it, the reservation. I could have said there was a double booking, a kitchen emergency. Hell, I owned the place, I didn't need an excuse. But I didn't cancel, because this wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about pride either. It was about readiness. For 5 years, I let them believe I had vanished into dirt and disgrace. Let them believe I had nothing. Let them forget me. But now I was the house they were walking into. I replied 2 hours later, confirmed, I'll be there. Saturday came. I arrived 10 minutes early, not through the staff entrance, not in my usual boots or flour-dusted apron. I wore a clean denim dress, leather boots still dusty from the farm, a faded corduroy jacket my pigs had chewed the corner of once. I didn't wear perfume, didn't hide the scent of smoke and hay clinging to my skin. I wasn't there to impress them, I was there to face them. The hostess saw me and nodded like we'd discussed. "Miss Hannah," she whispered. I smiled. Let them seat me last. From the hallway I could hear them, my mother's clipped tone correcting the wine pronunciation, my father reading the menu aloud like gospel. Lillian's laugh, sharp, shiny, echoing off the brick walls. I stood near the sideboard until the hostess gave me the signal, then I walked in. For half a second the table froze, like someone had turned off the music mid-note. Then my father chuckled. "You really think you belong here?" He said it like a punchline. I didn't flinch. "Good evening, everyone," I said simply. Lillian leaned toward my mother. "She smells like pig manure," she whispered loud enough for the whole table to hear. I sat down without a word. My boots thudded softly on the hardwood. My hands were clean but rough, my hair brushed but frizzy from barn air. I looked exactly like myself. "You could have dressed up," my mother said, eyes on her champagne flute. "This is my version of formal," I said, pouring myself water. "I hope you can afford dinner," my father added. "This place isn't cheap." I smiled. No one asked how I'd been. No one said, "Nice to see you." To them I was still the dropout, the disappointment, the pig girl. And yet, they had waited 5 weeks to sit at this table, to eat at a restaurant I had poured my soul into. They just didn't know it yet. We were halfway through the appetizers when it happened. Pork roulette, my own recipe, maple-glazed bacon flatbread, crackling pickled onions, cider-glazed shallots. They ate it, critiqued it, had no clue it was mine. My mother pushed aside the pickled onions. Lillian scraped off the crackling. My father muttered, "Too thick for modern plating." I let them speak. Then Marcus appeared. Marcus, our general manager, polished, calm, controlled. He approached the table with his signature grace. He held a leather folder in one hand and said, "Excuse me, is there a Miss Hannah Clark at this table?" My father frowned. "Why?" Marcus turned to me, ignoring the question, smiled. "Welcome back, Miss Hannah. Your usual table is ready in the side dining room. Shall I bring the investors' wine list now or after your walk-through silence?" Lillian blinked first. My mother froze mid-sip. My father choked on his wine, literally. He coughed twice, dabbed his lips with his napkin, eyes wide. I'm sorry what he said. Marcus stayed professional. Miss Clark prefers to dine privately when she visits the flagship. The back room was held for her. Shall I move this party there? No, I said calmly. This table is perfect. They stared at me like I'd grown tusks. You work here? Lillian asked, squinting. Not quite, I said. You know the staff, my mother asked, voice cracking. I trained most of them. My father leaned in. So what? What are you, assistant manager, sous chef? I looked at him directly. No, Dad, I own this restaurant. The Honest Pig is mine. I founded it. I run it. I designed the menu you're eating. Silence. Every course, every ingredient, every scent in this building, it's me. My mother whispered, I thought this was some trendy farm-to-table thing. She's joking, my father said, almost hopeful. Marcus cleared his throat. Actually, Sir Miss Clark is not only the owner, but the executive chef and founder of our entire restaurant group. This flagship is the heart of our brand. My mother blinked. The brand, I nodded. We have 7 locations now: Boston, Portland, Chicago, Denver. I opened them using pork raised from my own farm, the one you called a patch of mud and dreams. The words landed like stoneware. You lied, Lillian said quietly. You made us think you were struggling. No, I said. You assumed I was. But... Why, my mother's voice trembled not from sadness but confusion. Why wouldn't you tell us? I looked around the table, at the people who had once decided I was only worth loving if I played by their rules, because I wanted to see who you were when you thought I had nothing. And now I know. Marcus was still standing by, professional as ever. He spoke again. Chef Miranda would like your opinion on the heirloom rib rub, Miss Clark, before the team finalizes the spring menu. I stood. I'll be back shortly, I said, adjusting my jacket. Enjoy the entree. It's a braised pork shoulder, my signature, and with that, I walked away. When I returned 15 minutes later, nothing on the table had moved. Plates untouched, steam rising, silence so thick you could taste it. They didn't look angry. They looked uncertain. For the first time in years, they didn't know who I was. Lillian looked up first. So it's all true? I nodded. My father sat rigid like he was trying to rewrite everything in real time. You built all of this? Yes, I said softly. From scratch. From the pigs you laughed at. My mother touched her pearl necklace, her old tell. But the funding, the operations, the growth. How could you? I worked 3 jobs the first year, I replied. I slept in a trailer, cooked on a camp stove, borrowed what I had to, hustled for every dollar. I made it work. Lillian leaned back. You could have called. You didn't have to cut us off. I raised an eyebrow. You cut me off the day I said I wanted to raise pigs. You called it shameful, told people I was going through a phase, said I'd come crawling back. We were worried, my mother said, but it sounded like a defense, not an apology. No, you were embarrassed. You thought I had chosen something unworthy. But I didn't choose pig farming instead of success. I chose it instead of your version of success. No one spoke. Then I said it. Funny, isn't it, that you waited 5 weeks to eat at a place you didn't even know I owned? The same place you now say smells like manure. Lillian flushed. That was... Look, I didn't mean... You did, I interrupted. And that's okay, because it reminded me who I used to be to you, and who I'll never be again. My father cleared his throat, searching for dignity. What matters now is... this achievement. Hannah, you've done something remarkable. I think we all want to acknowledge that. I don't need acknowledgement, I said. I need respect. Real respect. Not the kind that shows up after a Forbes article or a trendy reservation. There was a pause. Then Lillian asked the question I knew was coming. So what now? You cut ties forever. Let this dinner be the last I looked at her. No. But from now on, everything changes. If we're going to have a relationship, it will be on my terms. That means no jokes about manure, no side eyes at my boots, no wondering how I can afford things, no subtle digs at my choices. My father nodded stiffly. I think we can manage that. I'm not finished, I added. They froze. I don't want networking favors. No investment offers, no guest invites so you can show off your daughter's restaurant. I'm not your trophy now that I'm successful. I'm still the same girl who loved soil and smoke more than silk and status. My mother blinked quickly. Her lip trembled, but she said nothing. Then I added one last thing. I'm proud of what I built, but I'm prouder that I built it without bending into someone you'd finally accept. I'm here tonight. Not because I need your approval. I'm here because I finally don't. Lillian exhaled, eyes softening. Okay, she said quietly. That's fair. I paused. And if you'd like, I could host the rehearsal dinner here. As my gift. Her eyes widened. You do that. You're still my sister, I said. But let's be clear, this isn't about proving myself. It's about offering what I've built on my own terms. For the first time all night, she smiled. A real one, she said. Across the table, my mother's eyes glistened. My father looked down, maybe ashamed, maybe just finally quiet. I'd like that, Lillian said softly, and I'd like to know more. About what you do, how you got here. I smirked. You'll have to come early. I'll show you how to feed the pigs. She laughed. I just might. And for the first time in years, the table didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like a beginning. Later that night, after the plates had been cleared, after the last glass of cider was sipped in silence, I slipped away from the dining room and into the kitchen, my sanctuary. The clatter of forks, the sizzle of cast iron, the low murmur of my team, calling out orders. It was the language of home. Miranda, my head chef, looked up from the pass window. So she said, smirking, "How was dinner with the Royals?" I laughed. They choked on the pork, metaphorically and literally. She raised an eyebrow. Too spicy. No, I said, smiling, just honest. We reviewed the spring menu updates, tasted a sliver of smoked belly for salt, adjusted the char on the seared loin, nothing fancy, just the work, the kind of rhythm that keeps you anchored, especially when everything else in life feels like driftwood. When the team finally wrapped and the lights dimmed to their soft after-hours glow, I lingered by my office door, checked my phone. One new message, from Lillian. That was a lot. But thank you. Also, can we talk next week? I'd love to bring someone by the farm. No judgment, just curiosity. I smiled. Maybe she meant it. Maybe she didn't. But for the first time, she was reaching out not to fix me, but to know me. I typed back a simple reply. Sure. Wear boots. I stepped outside, out to the back patio where the staff took their breaks. The night air in the city was cooler than usual. Quiet, not empty, but earned. Our herb garden was still thriving. Thyme, basil, rosemary, all growing in the same dirt my staff walked over every day. Even here, surrounded by concrete and noise, I'd made space for something real to grow. I sat down on the wooden bench near the rosemary bush, opened my worn leather-bound notebook, the one I only used when thoughts felt too big for screens. And I wrote. I used to believe that success would feel like applause, but it doesn't. It feels like stillness, like peace, like not flinching when someone questions your path because you no longer need to defend it. It feels like mud on your boots in a room full of crystal and not caring. It feels like walking into a restaurant and knowing every scent, every story, every soul behind the dishes because you built it. It feels like being the same girl they once called foolish and not needing to prove them wrong anymore. I closed the notebook and looked up at the sky. The stars were dimmer than they were on the farm, but they were still there, steady, constant, true. And I realized finally, fully, I had come full circle. Not because they saw me now, but because I no longer needed them to. So no, this isn't a story about revenge. It's not even about proving them wrong. It's about what happens when you stop waiting to be accepted and start building the life that accepts you. It's about the girl who once cried in a trailer, who once sold bacon for pennies in the cold, who once believed that dignity came from a diploma or applause, but learned that real dignity, it's showing up in muddy boots and owning the room anyway. My family still doesn't understand everything I do. They still hesitate when the conversation turns toward pigs or pasture management, but that's okay, because now I don't speak to convince. I speak to share. And sometimes sharing yourself honestly is the most radical act of all. So if you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever been told you're foolish, unworthy, or not enough, if you've ever stood in silence while your own family laughed at your dreams, just remember this. Sometimes the table they mocked you from will one day serve your recipe. Your turn. Have you ever been dismissed by the people closest to you, ever walked away to build something they said would never last? Drop your story in the comments, because trust me, there's more of us than you think. Comment your journey. Like if this hit home. Subscribe for more real stories of grit, betrayal, and becoming who they said you couldn't be.